The best late-night conservative talk show in America, Sackheads Radio. And listen, there are no people better on the air to give you the best in conservative talk than Sackhead Sean and Sackhead Clint. And we're working on the immigration papers for a certain other guy who happens to work here, too. For those who are tuning in around the world to the best in late-night conservative talk, Sackheads Radio.
Sackheads. Sackheads.
Radio.
Sackheads. Sackheads.
Radio.
Sack.
The best late-night conservative talk show in America. In America.
In America.
Into the bylaw.
And in this web was a large, I'm pretty sure it was the biggest spider I've ever seen.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Sackheads Radio Show. It's the 28th of December, 2016, the last show of the year.
Well, that was pretty exciting, wasn't it?
And that's it. We'll see
Behind
you next
the
year.
scenes.
As many of you know, we've been in the studio for hours preparing for this.
Hours.
BZ just walked through the door, but you know.
That's a little bit inside baseball, I suppose.
Yeah. Actually, I have to thank BZ for setting up the studio this evening. Clint is still off this week, and just because. And I guess I should tell everyone, he's on a 3-week suspension.
Now, is it official? Is it a sackhead suspension?
It's an official sackhead suspension.
Okay, all right.
We had to suspend him per our bylaws.
It's paragraph 3, I think, isn't it?
It is absolutely
page 7?
paragraph 3, which is refusal to spray air freshener after the fact. I'll let you figure out the rest.
That's definitely. Oh, and he's on double secret probation. for
Double
that.
secret. We actually just extended his probationary period by 90 days.
Oh, oh my God.
Oh, man. No, so we're hoping to have him back next week. BZ, thank you, sir. I just literally ran through the door 2 minutes before the show started, so I appreciate all the hard work you did.
Can you imagine what this show would be like if all of a sudden people tuned in? It was just me.
Yeah.
There'd be dials clicking off throughout the entire nation. Who is this guy? Turn it off.
More importantly, right, it would be more of the confusion, I think. Right?
Well, they'd figured that they'd have to do something really important instead of listening to Sackheads because the real stars of Sackheads weren't there. They'd have to do something real like balance their checkbooks or clean their fish tank.
Right. Well, you know, it's one of those things where you almost think you'd have the wrong show, right? Because usually it's my melodic voice at the very beginning welcoming everybody.
Right, and that's what I mean. They'd hear me, and that the dials would be turning to the off position all around the nation.
Who the hell is this Australian guy?
And why is he here? No, I didn't say why is he queer. I said why is he here?
Here. Not that we would judge either way.
No,
I mean,
no,
totally.
Thank you. No.
That's totally up to you.
Not that there's anything wrong with that.
Listen, I mean, if you're into the Santa thing, I'm sure some guys are, you'd be all set. But
luckily, there is a closet not more than 10 feet away from us right here that I could get into and then emerge from.
Oh, man.
I see beads of sweat coming off your forehead. You weren't doing about 105 on the freeway, were you?
No, side streets.
Okay, well, that's even safer.
Freeways are for amateurs. If I don't launch my truck 4 to 6 feet off the ground, you know what's funny is after the crash I had a couple weeks ago, I'm sure the insurance company's listening to this going, that's the problem right there. I got him.
Got him. Now we know. Here comes the rate jacking up.
It is our end of the year show. We do have a lot to get caught up on. But I want to... we don't do this for a lot of different people. But I want to throw a word to our Star Wars friends. And like me, I grew up watching Star Wars. It was always a influential movie set for me.
I'll bet even now you can tell me, because I know I can. I bet you, Sean, and everybody else can tell me what theater they were in when they first watched the original Star Wars and where it was.
For me, my first was Empire Strikes Back.
You didn't watch the original?
I may have been, but I was too young to recall.
Oh, great. Thanks.
But I can tell you, I saw Empire Strikes Back the first time I remember in the back of my a friend's car, and it might have been a relative's car, at the Revere Cinemas Drive-In in Revere, Massachusetts. That's no longer there, and I can remember very much so watching that. So it's very, very sad. Of course, I'm talking about Carrie Fisher passing away at the age of 60. Right? She was young.
Yeah, her mother just passed away.
Immediately afterwards.
Yeah, the next day.
De-
she was 84.
Yeah,
today.
Debbie Smith.
Pardon?
Debbie
Reynolds.
Debbie Reynolds. Sorry, not Smith. Tragic for that family.
But it's like you see it all the time. It's almost a parody of itself. For example, a couple that's been around for 50 years, 60 years together, and one mate passes within a week, within a month, a day, whatever. The second one passes too.
Yeah.
Because they, as far as they're concerned, that was their life. There was so much investment, so much humanity, and the person figures the mind is such a strange and powerful, absolutely powerful thing.
Yeah, and the heart, the heart breaks too. I think the heart, once it gets to a certain point, I'm a biggest believer that your heart will give up. Ken in the chat room, Iverson Mall Movieplex was his first date for Star Wars 1. Wow. His first date. And I don't know where they made him sit in the theater at that time. It was the 70s, so he could have sat wherever he wanted to, I guess. But, hey, that was their rules, not mine.
Smoking in loge and side sections only.
But people don't realize the amount of influence Star Wars has, and I think we do overtly. The amount of references, the amount of influence that Star Wars has, how it brought everybody to get interested in space. Just so many different things that Star Wars did in a good way.
I knew it was going to be a very special movie when you saw initially the scrolling words. There was the John Williams score that swelled the music. It swelled up. It was it was beautiful. What beautiful orchestral music. John Williams is a genius.
Oh, my goodness.
In terms of that. But you knew that you were in for a special movie the moment the Star Destroyer came into view from overhead.
Yes.
From overhead. And this small little ship was being fired upon. And you looked at the Star Destroyer coming in from overhead, and it just kept coming and coming and coming and coming. It was so huge that once you saw that scene, you knew this was a special movie.
Yeah, I agree. And it had never been, the world had been interested and had seen Star Trek at that point. But Star Wars was filmed in such a different way. It was developed in such a different way. Special effects like nobody had ever seen before. It really changed the face of cinema.
George Lucas and ILM changed essentially everything together. The thing that makes it absolutely unique, especially the first Star Wars movie, I don't know about you folks, but I'm on CG overload. Computer graphics. If you saw the new Star Wars Rogue One, which is a fairly good movie, I must admit. I
haven't seen Rogue One yet.
They brought back, because Peter Cushing, who was the number 2 to Darth Vader, on the Imperial side,
Grand Moff Tarkin.
Grand Moff Tarkin. He passed away in 1994. So Disney, who now owns the franchise Star Wars, had to go to the estate of Peter Cushing and ask if they could recreate him. But the eye is unique because it can tell.
Yes.
And I already knew Peter Cushing was dead. That was nothing unique for me. But as soon as I saw Peter Cushing, I thought, well, they didn't bring him back for the dead. But you could just tell there's something off at that CG.
Yeah, just a little bit. That's what everyone said. Just slightly.
And the eye can just tell.
Well, and you've seen that with a lot of different movies where they've crossed to that CGI portion, and it's just not... I mean, you go back and you watch Terminator 2, when they had they were using all that liquid metal appearance.
Yes,
And
which they stole, by the way. Do you remember the movie
no.
Abyss?
Yes, The Abyss.
With Ed Harris
Wow.
and Mary Elizabeth Mastrantonio when they were just
Wow.
miles underneath the ocean. That morphing silver CG effect came from The Abyss.
That's a riot. You're
And
100% right.
then they used it and morphed it and used it to their own ways in the second Terminator movie with Robert Patrick.
Robert Patrick,
as the
who
bad
played,
guy.
Yep, T-1000.
Who has ears almost as big as Barack Hussein Obama.
Almost.
Not quite.
But you go back and you watch that now, and it technologically doesn't stand the test of time. Like, you're like, oh, wow, you can really, it's still a great movie, but you're like, oh, you can really see how poor the CGI was, right? That was the first big step into CGI, per se.
Well, here's the other thing. CG was in its infancy, so a great deal of what you saw, and this is what I love. Do you remember the 1980 movie The Thing?
Yes.
With Russell, Kurt Russell.
Yes.
That was the effects gentleman on that, Rob Bottin, who learned from an effects genius by the name of Dick Smith. Dick Smith, and his proteges were Rob Bottin and Rick Baker. Rick Baker did Werewolves.
I remember that one.
The one where the young kid turns into
London.
a werewolf, and the effects in The Thing were real. There was very little, if any, CG in that. I loved The Thing because that's an artist. That is a craft that's gone away. And that's why I appreciate the first Star Wars movies, because
That was all special.
those were
artistry.
Those
special
were
effects.
actually crafted, handcrafted models, and then they created what they had to do in order to mask and make all of this special effects is they had to make multiple passes and shoot them multiple times for various gradients. And the backgrounds were painted. They were matte paintings, and at the time, the matte painter, who was just a stellar individual, and a matte is a non-moving background, basically, and the person is in this, I remember distinctly, is by the name of Matt Urovich.
Wow.
And he's a wonderful, wonderful creator. But in order to put all these layers and edit them all together, the camera has to make the same pass the same way each and every time. One for the model, one for the background, one for the effects, one for the explosions.
Know this is amazing to me.
One for anything that's actually moving in the background. The camera has to make effects. The biggest technical plus that occurred from this is the ability to craft on X and Y scales and enter it into a computer system, because this all has to be computer controlled. You have to make sure that the camera moves in the exact same way with each and every pass. And they started at ILM, the computer system that made the computer that allowed the camera to track the exact same way every time. And that was hard, long, difficult work. And then you had to add in all the extra special effects that were occurring.
And if you just tune in, this is the SHR Media Movie Talk.
Yes,
With Sean and
Movie
DZ.
Talk with Bill and Jim.
No, but it is amazing how far it's advanced. But also, you have to think, even if you go back and watch the original Star Wars, and I mean the original cut, not all the redos, how amazing the special effects were.
They were glorious. You believed you were there.
And how amazing the actors who are also adjusting to this new technology and having to act for a lot of it on a hope and a prayer, if you will.
Act in what originally was blue screen.
Yep.
And then changed to green screen. That the thing that the actors had to do was learn how to play amongst themselves and not have something obviously in front of them to clue them in to how the acting should go. So frequently they would interact with each other simply in front of a blue screen
and hope it worked.
And hope it works. And for initially, I'll bet that was rather difficult, and I'll wager they felt stupid.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact.
Yeah, and just completely foolish because you're acting for nothing. There's no set. There's no nothing. So. But I guess to get back to the original point, I was very sad. I don't know how we went off on that tangent.
Well, didn't we say celebrities die in 3?
Yes.
We had George Michael. Well, just recently.
George Michael.
Then we had Carrie Fisher.
Yep.
And then we had
Debbie Smith.
right. Let's just leave her at Debbie Smith.
Debbie Reynolds. I'm sorry, Debbie
No,
Reynolds.
no, no. I like it. Let's. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, from now on, she is now officially Debbie Smith.
Yeah, I'm not renaming anybody. I'm just a moron. Yeah, so, and of course to the Star Wars family and everyone who's heartbroken, of course their family. We wish them nothing but the best. George Michael was surprised, too. It's, like I said, everything comes with 3. 2016 has been brutal on celebrities. 2016 has been brutal on a lot of things. But celebrities is surely one of them.
2016 has been brutal on my ass, I'll tell you that for sure. And I know it has on you, too, just in different ways. I'm ready for 2017, boys and girls. It's got to be better than 16.
I'll tell you what. Anything. I saw the greatest meme the other day. I was just reading what Golf was saying in the chat room. Go to shrmedia.com and click live chat if you want to jump in. Saw the best meme the other day, and it was 2016 pulling this guy with the shirt said 2016 pulling the world behind him, and it was beaten into a pulp. And he's handing the chain of the world off to a guy with the shirt. It says 2017. It's holding a can of gasoline. He's like, all right, I did the best you did. It's your, best I could. It's your turn. And I think that summarizes the last year.
Yeah, you got it pretty much.
So many ups and downs. So many tragic and amazing stories. It just really was a tough year to cover all of this.
I'm just scrolling through some of the photographs here that I'm looking at the Confuser. George Michael, Zsa Zsa Gabor, Alan Thicke, the astronaut John Glenn, Greg Lake, the bass player from Emerson, Lake and Palmer. Saw them 3 times. They're absolutely stellar, wonderful musicians. Ron, the black guy that played in. Now I can't remember the TV show. All right, scroll on, BZ,
Prince.
scroll on.
Prince is a big one.
Prince, yes.
Yep.
Leon Russell, Robert Vaughn.
Yes.
Arnold Palmer.
Yeah. It's a long list this year.
It's an amazing list. The guy Kenny Baker that played R2-D2.
Yep. He passed away.
Passed away.
So it was a rough year, and hopefully 2017 is a little bit nicer to us.
It was an incredibly rough year.
Ron Glass.
Ron Glass.
From Barney Miller.
That's who I was thinking
Yes.
of, Ron Glass.
Yes.
Anton Yelchin.
Yes.
Anton Yelchin, of particular hideous note. Can you imagine this? I don't know if you heard about how it is that he passed away. He played the new Mr. Chekhov on Star Trek in the new franchise. He got out of a Jeep Cherokee.
This poor kid.
And he's in his early 20s.
Yep.
And goes up to a gate, and Jeeps have had terrible issues and problems with people trying to figure out how do you put this damn thing into park. And the car rolled up over and crushed him.
Yep.
That ended his life. How ridiculously tragic
Yeah.
is that?
Scary.
Muhammad Ali.
Yep.
Morley Safer.
Who else we got?
God, just the faces just keep coming. There's Prince.
Golf Dog says, let's move on. They're all dead. We got work to do.
Okay.
I know. I just, for the end of the year,
Okay, we beat that to
a pulp.
death.
Yeah. We beat it to... it's just amazing because, we have to do a little bit of a review show. Biggest news for you this year. What do you think the biggest news story was?
It's almost too obvious. I'd have to say Donald Trump. Time chose him as the person of the year. Mm-hmm. People hated Time Magazine for that. But for Time Magazine's qualifications, it was in terms of who had the most impact. So it's almost too easy to say Donald Trump because no one saw it coming. Everyone thought he was just, he's the guy with the orange cat perched on top of his head in the Slim Whitman sort of style. I don't know how you get a cat to look like that, but somehow he does it daily.
Right.
And kudos for him to do that. But that's low-hanging fruit.
It is. It is.
So other than Donald Trump, I think one of the amazing things is how easily people are offended when things don't go their way.
I think that was the genre of not the genre, but that was one of the biggest 2016 not stories but issues.
Issues, and I hope that people are beginning to see that this is something that's been true of leftists for years
Yep.
and years and years. When they point their hoary little fingers at conservatives or the GOP, that we're so oppressive, the only people that are oppressive in this nation, and certainly across the pond in the EU, are leftists. They're the first ones who wish to censor what you see, think, hear, or speak. It's as if the Bill of Rights means nothing to
And
them.
it
The Constitution means nothing
It
to them.
doesn't.
It's a changing document. It's a changing world, and you just have to go along with it. That's not how it works.
No.
Parents who have killed children who are helicopter parents have done absolutely nothing. And I have to admit, I'll be the first to put up my hand and say this is how it went. The greatest generation came back from World War II, and from the horrors that they saw, decided that the things were perfect. It was time to build. It was time to buy products. It was time to build homes. It was time to start families. And because the parents, those people in the greatest generation, the first thing that was the greatest influence on them was the Great Depression. Mm-hmm. And so their mindset is, I had to somehow pull it out with my family through the Great Depression, and by God, I'm going to make sure that my kids are going to do better than that.
Yes.
So in a way, the greatest generation was, in fact, that. But they helped to,
Soften.
in the process of trying to give their children everything, they ended up inadvertently somewhat lowering the bar. Then it was the baby boomers.
Mm-hmm. Who just kept going.
I just, by an inch, I am in the baby boom generation because, I'm sort of your, we talked about it last week. I was your basic Mark 1, Model 1 mistake. And then...
So you'd actually be like the Mark 57.
Yeah, well...
Not the Mark 1.
Yeah. And so the baby boomers decided that they were going to take that ball and run with it. And they created a generation of children who were coddled. We went through the 60s with these kids. We went through the Haight-Ashbury with everyone.
Produced the flower children, it produced the hippies, it produced the free love.
And in a great way,
anti-American.
I'll have to hold up my hand and say, yes, my generation, the baby boomers, are quite guilty of being the creators and purveyors and those who have allowed children to do this.
Yep. They softened their standards. And by doing that, they softened the resolve of the baby or the hippies and all of those that come afterwards.
Just conjure this for a moment.
And then, it also produced political correctness that has weaved its way into so many aspects of lives and decision making. It pushed the belief that everything should be an emotional decision, and literal and factual decisions should only be if they agree with the emotion. We've got away from that tactical thinking about our generation or about our direction, and we've gone into this emotional thinking, and you can't rule your life with emotions.
The problem with that is that there is no thinking. Critical thinking amounts to leaving high school, being told that no matter what, you're going to college, which is a grand mistake for many kids. The perfect time to go into a trade is right now.
Yep.
Because so many people are required in the trades, and they're going begging for people who... you want to be a welder? You're going to be making $75,000 pretty much right off the bat.
Minimally.
You want to be an underwater welder, for example? And I just looked this up the other day. You're going to be starting in 6 figures.
Yeah, not ending either.
No,
it's underwater welders are just so far gone. It's not even funny.
But kids don't. They're not taught to critical think, and once they leave high school, They go to college. College is where thinking doesn't begin.
It's where it ends.
It's where it ends.
Yeah, they start pushing the agenda into you, right? The agenda over and over and over again. Then they get out into the workforce and they can't understand why they have to produce. They can't understand how they're held accountable for their actions. None of that.
Well, they want to know why they don't get the limo in the corner office.
Right, because they've
been told their skirts have been fluffed up for so long that they're such wonderful people. They got props just for attendance.
Panty wasters, as I like to call them. Just real quick before the break, my biggest story of the year, I think, was Brexit. And
that was startling.
And here's why. And it wasn't because it passed. I actually thought it was going to pass. But we go back to the media coverage and the polling and how even though the left media in Europe and America did everything they could to try to push Brexit away and say, hey, this is a done deal, don't even waste your time voting, this, that, and the other thing, we saw polls up and down at how it was just going to be crushed and destroyed. There's no way Brexit will pass. And then Brexit passed.
That's why it was, in your mind and my mind, the light was going off. This is all a big farce.
Well, and we on the inside, we've seen that for a while. We've been telling people that. This just reiterated the fact that those of us who've been paying attention actually know this. But I also think Brexit affected our election. I think it showed what mainstream media run by the left and leftist polling, that arm that is out there that is so heavy on people's necks when it comes to politics. It showed that the vast majority of it is BS, and true media, quote unquote, true media doesn't exist on a mainstream level anymore. It's all objectivity. It's all about what to achieve and how we can adjust this thing to get people to do our bidding. And I think that woke a lot of people up in this country going into this last election, and I think that led to a lot of reason why Trump got elected. Because we just came fresh off Brexit and we saw how wrong all that bullshit was. And we weren't, those who voted for Trump were not going to be jaded. They just turned around and said, well, I don't care what the polls say. I'm showing up because I've seen this fail before on a huge scale. And I think that is one of the biggest stories because not only did it affect the EU, not only did it affect Britain, but it also affected our election. People weren't buying the narrative anymore, and that what we've seen for the last 8 months now, 9 months, 10 months of that whole not buying the narrative that's been pushed, which is why the left imploded. They were so used to people buying their narrative.
Well, and merely accepting whatever kind of
sheep to slaughter. I hate to say it.
They were coprophagic. And if anybody who knows that word, I'm being kind. That's all the sycophants.
Hold on, I'm Googling it.
The American media maggots were all coprophagic.
Yes.
They completely were. And they went insane when there was actual pushback.
Well, because they learned that their power that they wielded without any sort of backlash and without any sort of checks, all of a sudden got balanced. And now you're seeing people, I mean, you look at mainstream media numbers still today, and they're horrible for a reason. And they're all sputtering, they're all running in circles.
They're dying for a reason.
They're freaking out. Mainstream media is going the way of newspapers.
They're fighting for their lives.
Yeah. Mainstream media is going the way of newspapers because people have realized just how bought and paid for mainstream media
if for no other reason than technology. You have a video camera that would have been considered state-of-the-art maybe 10 years ago in your phone.
Yeah.
Anyone can be a journalist now. If there's some kind of a crisis that's occurring in front of you, a terrible accident, a plane crash, a riot, whatever, you can take out your phone. You can take out your phone and stream it live.
Like it's nothing.
You're a journalist now.
Absolutely. And from this journalist, we have to pay some bills. We're up against a break. When we come back, I want to talk about Israel, Kerry, and just that last.
And let us not forget about that wonderful professor from Drexel.
No, we will get to the Drexel professor. If he has his way, we won't be back. But
true.
We will be back here on the Sackheads Radio Show live on the SHR Media Network.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
Hey, it's Sean from the Sackheads Radio Show, also one of the owners here at the SHR Media Network. Are you opinionated? Have you ever wanted to do your own show? Have you ever heard somebody like the Sackheads and go, yeah, I could probably do that better? Well, now's your chance. Send me a 5-minute clip at sackheadsradio@gmail.com, and maybe you can be part of the SHR broadcasting team. sackheadsradio@gmail.com.
Times are dark. The people are misled by corrupt politicians, lied to by establishment media, and deceived by the false messages of Islam. A nation looking for direction needs a guide. It needs a man with a cane. I'm Dave Milner. Join me on Spreaker, SHR Media, Pundit Press Radio, and YouTube through the SHR Media page for a different kind of commentary on the unpleasant blind guy. Because the truth is not always pleasant.
In a world controlled by corrupt politicians,
You got a business. You didn't build that.
a team of ordinary men emerge from the ashes to give voice to the voiceless and hope to the hopeless. Sackhead Sean.
Dude, I'm not saying Cap is stupid, bro.
Sackhead Clint.
All good friends of ours usually show up drunk.
Also starring Sako as the producer.
I'm a little bit drunk, 'cause I'm drinking.
They are the Sackheads Radio Show. Every Wednesday at 8 p.m. Pacific on shrmedia.com.
The bloviating Zeppelin. He's big-footed enough radio shows to last a lifetime, courtesy of Sean, Clint, Ken, and Jersey Joe. Now it's time for him to waddle on his own 2 feet via the glorious SHR Media. Gird thy loins for the bloviating Zeppelin's Berserk Bobcat Saloon. Coming soon to ossicles near you. Excelsior.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
And welcome back to the Sackheads Radio Show, live on the SHR Media Network.
Let's see if it works. Hey, it does work.
That's nice. BZ's got a new toy over there.
You can't see it. It's again more inside baseball. But a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away, I used to work for KFBK in Sacramento. And that's the station where Morton Downey Jr. worked and where Rush Limbaugh worked. Mm-hmm. And I was given, when I left, an old RCA microphone that if I... you can see it if you go to my Twitter account at BZ. And it's a wonderful microphone. And anytime I've been here, that's the one I've been using. Well, those people who see the prototypical broadcasting microphone, I have a copy now of a Shure 55S that I'm speaking into, the 75th edition, anniversary edition. And I just plugged it in to see if it works and see if the tones sound any different. I think I can tell a little bit of a difference.
It's nice. It sounds nice.
But this is the first time I've had the opportunity to plug it in, so I just had to check and see if it was working.
No, I think it sounds great.
It's better than plugging it in and finding that nothing is happening.
That nothing happened whatsoever. In other news, speaking of new and exciting things, it's funny to see the damage that this administration is trying to do before they leave. And for an administration that swears they're going to do everything they can for a peaceful transition,
This has been the most childish administration I've ever seen. What they're doing now is saying, if I can't be here, I'm going to throw rocks at everyone and spoil it for all of you.
Yes.
I'm taking my toys and going home, and if I can't have a good time and be here, I'm going to make it miserable for everyone else. And then in steps John Kerry.
Hey, just so you guys think this can't get any worse, we're going to send John Kerry in.
Yeah. In his stentorian voice.
Oh, God, even as a Bostonian, I can't stand his voice. So, as we all know, on the 21st, just about a week ago, or a couple days ago, rather, the UN Security Council had a vote condemning Israel's settlements with Palestine as illegal. Sovereign nation deciding what to do with people that aren't part of their nation, but yet try to push the borders away. 1967 wars, blah, blah, blah. Okay, all of a sudden the UN can decide borders, which I think is amazing to me. That this non-elected body that is nothing full of jackass and bureaucrats can tell a sovereign nation where its borders can and can't be. Mind you, the land taken in the 67 war with Israel was taken because of the 1967 war. It created a buffer zone, and it also resolved the original border that Israel once had. So it wasn't like Israel decided to invade its neighbors and start taking land. They were attacked, and when they pushed back, they said, no, this is ours. You guys want to play this game? Fine. And they've allowed the Palestinians to create settlements there. Sovereign nation. I just want to keep saying that because I think that's the biggest part of the story that's getting missed is the UN is telling the sovereign nation of Israel where its borders are.
You know, in a way, you could say that this is kind of aligned with Brexit and with the EU in terms of, and that's why the UK, the people that voted for Brexit, they're tired of an unelected cadre of elitists from Brussels, Belgium, telling every country how it is that they're going to go. And it's the same within the UN. An unelected cadre of elitists from nations that would rather see us dead and would rather see Israel dead, voting to make sure that they do just that same. One particular point that I'd like to point out, from 2015 to 2016, the UNGA, which is the United Nations General Assembly, its 70th session, has sanctioned Israel 20 times. They have made 3 other sanctions to the rest of the world.
Yep.
Comparatively speaking, Israel must be the most evil planet, the most evil nation on the planet,
Yep.
according to the United Nations. These are their own statistics.
Now,
this is clear and obvious nuttery.
Well, and I want to remind everyone, Israel is the only sovereign nation in the Middle East in which women can vote and drive. Homosexuals and gays are not lined up and killed. It's not illegal to be homosexual or gay. It doesn't matter what your religion is. You can serve in the armed forces. You can they have religious freedom there.
They're the only democratic nation
in that
surrounded by enemies.
Right. So that's Israel. And the UN, with this ridiculous vote, wanted to condemn them and essentially say, hey, you have to do something about these settlements. And in a way they're right, because people from these settlements keep trying to kill their soldiers and police officers and citizens, but that's not where really where this is coming from.
Well, historically speaking, it occurred back in 1967 with what was called the
Six-Day War.
The 6 Day War.
Yep.
And what happened is that you had a coalition of Egypt, Jordan, Syria, and then a lot of people don't know this. Additionally, forces of Iraq, Kuwait, and Algeria,
yes,
of all crazy places, all getting together, and they were going to invade Israel.
Destroy them, wipe them off the face of the planet.
Yes, Israel got word of this and basically took their air force, this little teeny speck in the midst of the Middle East, and with a proactive attack, basically eliminated all of the aircraft on the Egyptian side.
Yep.
And then once they had air supremacy, it went to them. So what what happened as a result of all of this is they got territory on what's called the East Bank, the Gaza Strip, and part of East Jerusalem and the Golan Heights. I've almost forgot the Golan Heights.
Is a big one.
These are the fruits of war, and it was war waged
Against
upon
them.
Israel, and Israel won.
Well, and they also took that as a buffer zone from future attacks. You have to understand that the country of Israel, who was very, very young at the time, still trying to establish itself, still very, very able.
Yeah, Israel only became a nation state in 1948.
Right. And they had a very young military, very young everything. I mean, it's still the sticker on the window, so to speak, as far as modern day history. Now, Israel's been there for years, and we all know that. But they were removed at one point forcibly before they were able to defend themselves. It's a history lesson we can go down another time. On the 6-Day War, they kept that area as a buffer zone against further attacks because they knew that it would probably happen again. And there's been several attempts, and that doesn't mean these attempts will never happen again. Now, they've forged relationships with Egypt. They've forged relationships with Jordan. They have
peace with Egypt
and Jordan. They've done
and Jordan has done a remarkable about face itself.
Yep, they grew into a responsible state. But Israel lives in a place constantly surrounded by people trying to kill them, and they know that, so they maintain their safety. Nobody can blame them except for the UN, apparently. So when they pass this resolution, the UN, who has a chance to veto in this vote, chooses to abstain from voting. Now, everyone was like, oh, well, inaction is the same as, it's just inaction. They didn't say one way or another. I said, no, inaction is the same as action.
Historically speaking, this was a massive,
this was a giant middle finger to Israel.
Slap in the face.
From the Obama administration.
Yeah, like I wrote in my blog, he just spit in the face of Jews everywhere.
Everywhere. And what you're going to not only does this affect Israel, I want to get into Kerry's speech in Israel and Netanyahu's response.
Oh, yes, glorious.
Oh, gosh, he is a statesman and a half. But more importantly, I also want to say what this does to the UN and the American delegation to the UN. They know here in another, 23 days, 24 days, we're going to have a new administration. They know that administration, and there's a reason the UN held this vote before this administration was gone, by the way.
And there may be another push.
And they did that because they knew they had a complicit United States delegation to the United Nations. Susan Powers is just a puppet for an administration that does not like Israel. They've said it time and again through their actions. This proves only another reason to understand how they truly feel about Israel. Who is, by the way, our closest allies, closer than Great Britain. They are if our nation were to have a sister or brother, it would be Israel. Their democratic system is not too far away from a constitutional republic. They have a constitution. They have a representative government. Some finite changes, nothing dramatic whatsoever.
The UK might disagree with what they call the special relationship, but certainly Israel is right up there with the UK.
Yeah. Oh, I think Israel has surpassed the UK in the last 8 years. As far as their feelings towards Americans, not the administration, and their understanding of our duality and our relationship as kin, if you will.
Yeah, we're schizoid.
They also know that this nation, contrary to the administration, has more Jews in it than just about any other nation in the world with the exception of Israel. And they know that this is one of the first places outside of Israel and smaller communities where Jews were allowed to flourish freely and not be persecuted for their religion.
Speaking of persecution, a lot of the Israel is expanding. They're getting a lot of Jews from France who do not feel that they can live safely in France
and other places
anymore.
In Europe, and other places in Europe as well. There are a lot of people immigrating to Israel of other countries who are Jews and feel persecuted anywhere else and unsafe, like you said. So all of that aside, this administration walks in, has a chance to veto, and abstains. All of a sudden, the two-state solution isn't real, but it's on the tip of everyone's tongue. At the end of the day, everyone forgets. Israel can turn around and say to the UN, go pound sand, we're out. And you have nothing you can do to us. And walk away.
Netanyahu, in his most recent statement, said he is considering just that.
So, and that's where I want to go next. So now you flash forward to today. Kerry gives a speech. Part of me wants to go through the speech. The other part of me doesn't want to get nauseous on the air.
I have a part of it right here that I would care to read.
Okay.
And there are some points in here. I think there's two sets of phrases that I'm sure, Sean, you will pick up immediately and take the ball and run.
Okay.
And it goes like this. This is Kerry. He said, the truth is that trends on the ground, violence, terrorism, settlement, expansion, and the seemingly endless occupation, they are combining to destroy hopes for peace on both sides and increasingly cementing any irreversible one-state reality that most people do not actually want. Today, there are a similar number of Jews and Palestinians living between the Jordan River and the Mediterranean Sea. They have a choice. They can choose to live together in one state, or they can separate into two states. But here is a fundamental reality. If the choice is one state, Israel can either be Jewish or democratic. It cannot be both, and it won't ever really be at peace.
So here's the funniest part about that. To say, listen, we argue in this country that we are a Christian, Judeo-Christian nation. That's what our laws are based off of. The vast majority of religion in this country is Christian. Even our current laws, a lot of times when it comes to decency and morality, have to do with Christian beliefs, the Ten Commandments, the whole nine yards. You don't have to practice those beliefs to understand that, for the most part, they're on the up and up. They're not bad things per se. Judaism in that country is very, very deep because Israel was established as the Jewish state. Everybody from Europe that was persecuted by the Nazis moved to Israel. Part of their religion is much part of their nation. Yes, they have a constitution. Yes, they live by their constitution, but their values are based in Judeo-Christian values. And they also have their freedom of religion there. Once you start saying they can't be a quote-unquote Jewish state, you are eliminating their religion, which was the whole reason why they ended up there after World War II, is because they were being persecuted for their religion, for being who they were, and being murdered by the masses, by the Nazis. So we established this nation for them to flourish and be free again. And now you have the UN essentially going, well, you can't, Kerry, well, you can't do both. Bullshit.
Well, if you listen to his speech, he talked about Hamas. Now, when you think about Hamas. What is Hamas?
Terrorist organization.
It's a terrorist organization. Yeah. In his speech today, guess what John Kerry called it? Militant.
Yes.
Even John friggin' Kerry can't say the T word. That's what they are. They are terrorists.
Open about it. They talk about what their goals are. They have websites. They have information out there.
Yes, the complete elimination of Israel and all Jews on the face of the planet.
Yes. They make no bones about where they get their equipment from. It comes from Iran. Nobody has any questions about this whatsoever. When there's bombings or rocket attacks all over Israel, who does it come from? Hamas.
Well, in the distinct disdain and arrogance, the naked arrogance that John Kerry has when he, in his little stentorian tones, tells Israel, an independent sovereign nation state, that they either have to be Jewish or democratic. They can't be both. What the hell do you get off, John Kerry, saying this and lecturing Israel and lecturing Benjamin Netanyahu? That's exactly what you're doing. And guess what, Barack Obama? You're going to be known for a lot of stupid shite, mostly lying, but you're going to be known for this.
Yeah, this might take...
This is the way you want to go out?
This might take the Locky. Seriously, more than anything else. And can you imagine... Netanyahu is such a statesman that even when he's disagreed with us, he supported us. This statement is not that at all.
No.
This is a pure slap in the face to the Israeli government, the people of Israel, certainly Prime Minister Netanyahu. And it's one of those statements that if another country dared to say that about America, even this administration would go crazy. Now, we can have our reasons why they would go crazy may differ, and they should go crazy. I'm not saying it's wrong to be upset about that. Theirs is because it's probably not like leftist enough. If Netanyahu came out and said, hey, America needs to go back to its roots, they need more individual freedom, they need to go back to a Second Amendment, all this other stuff, this administration would go absolutely batshit crazy about it. But they think that they have the stones to go stand up and send Kerry out there. Oh, yeah, Israel are bad and Hamas. The fact that you'll mention Hamas when you're trying to address Israel bothers me too. And because he didn't mention them in a negative light per se. He also kind of mentioned them like they were a neutrality. Just the way it was worked into that speech. Like they're just kind of caught in the middle. When we know for a fact that they're not. The Palestinians and Hamas regularly attack Israel with rockets. If we had that going on here, it was coming from Mexico.
Well, and that's thank you for going there. That's the exact point that I was just going to make. Imagine if we were the United States and took away one of our oceans, and we only have one exposure to an ocean, and we are surrounded on all three sides. Let's say in reality we're surrounded by Jordan. Let's say we're surrounded by Egypt. Let's say we're surrounded by Syria.
I'll throw that all out
and
right
Saudi
now.
Arabia.
Throw it all out right now. Say Mexico says, hey, you know what? The top 30 miles of our country, it's run by cartels, and we're not responsible for it anymore. We don't go in there. We're afraid of it. We don't want to deal with it. It is what it is. And they just start lobbing rockets at America. And that's the easiest example.
That's essentially in a nutshell what's occurring
Yes.
to Israel every day.
Yes.
By persons who are telling them to their faces and whose resolution their foundational documents, I guess you could say, are the literal removal of Israel and Jews from the planet. And they make no bones about it. None whatsoever. That you're going to lecture Israel for an hour and 37 minutes when Israel, day to day, hour to hour, is under those conditions. How dare you?
Completely blind to reality. So now I want to talk about Bibi's response. And I know you have this.
What the biggest thing that I took away from this, and I loved it, is he made a clear distinction between speaking to the administration of the United States
and the people. Yes.
That, to me, spoke volumes about it. He was speaking simultaneously to both. He was directing venom towards Barack Obama and his administration, simultaneously recognizing that the people of the United States, he knew, are behind him, and that there's a new sheriff in town.
Yeah, it's coming. And that's why, Golf Dogs brought up a good point, too, about the UN earlier, and I didn't get a chance to read it, is the amount of Islamic and Muslim states that are in the UN. Where's Kerry talking to them about separating their religion from their state? Jordan's done a very good job of it, separating their religion from their state. Egypt, for the most part, they slipped back a little bit when the Muslim Brotherhood took over, but prior to that, they did a pretty good job of separating it. Even Saudi Arabia, when it comes to dealing with Israel, steps away from some of their religious values because they understand the value of Israel in that region. Israel is the one thing that keeps that region safe. All those nations in that region have Israel to thank. The Syrian crisis, anytime it starts to leak outside of its borders, Israel goes and pushes it back in for them too, without saying a word. How many times there's been Israeli strikes that you never hear about in mainstream media, but you catch on secondary media, where they started the Syrian conflict was starting to pour over borders, and the Israelis pushed it back to where it belonged. So all of those other nations understand the super importance, the ones that are right around them, the ones that actually have respect for Israel. Every other nation in that region that does not voted against this for the most part. And they're the ones who think that Israel should not exist. Now, I will acknowledge that, with the exception of Jordan, all those other nations I just mentioned, and Egypt to a point, if Israel were to fall, as long as somebody to keep that region safe replace them, they'd be fine with it. I don't think they have that emotional attachment. They have that tactical attachment, which is fine. It's a reason for letting them be who they are. It's a respect, one way or the other. But all those other nations that are voting against this, they don't want Israel to exist, including this administration. That's the amazing part.
It's simply mind-boggling.
The last time the Israelis went into Gaza, it was after 15 straight days of rocketing civilian areas, and they warned them several times to stop. If you're living in a house and somebody's shooting at you 15 days in a row, how many warnings are you going to give them to stop? And if you want to say, oh, you call the cops, they did. They told the UN, and the UN did nothing.
Historically, the UN has done nothing.
Exactly. So they need to protect themselves. So on that 16th day, and they said, hey, it's coming. We're going to do double knocks on the roofs. You're going to know when the attack's coming. Get out. And they went in. They kicked ass. They cleaned out a bunch of munitions, took out a bunch of combatants, and they left. Now, this is still their nation, technically.
And they were excoriated for having done that.
Oh, God, treated like animals. They were the problem, not the people lobbing rockets into civilian populations, children's, at hospitals, schools, roadways, anything. Israel, oh, you shouldn't have done that, Israel. Are you out of your fucking mind? Because I'll tell you something right now.
They're a nation under siege, not just historically, not just in 67 or 68.
Now.
Every day.
Yes. And we so don't understand terrorism in this country. You know, we're getting a little hint of it, but we still don't understand it on the scale that they do. The amount of terrorism that Israel sees, it's every day. You have, go to Lively, go to YouTube. All you have to do is look up Israeli Palestinian attack on Israel.
Every family is a prepper family. Every family has water. Every family has food. Every family has firearms. Every family has gas masks.
Yes. You go back to the Iraq wars, right? And the biggest concern, and we asked Israel, hey, we're going in the first time and the second time. We're going in. Do us a favor. Because of that volatility between the nations, don't do anything. And Israel said, okay, at the detriment of our people, we won't do it. We'll intercept rockets. We'll intercept aircraft if they try to show up, all that. We'll defend our homeland, but we won't actively attack with you to save that. And what do they get in return? Rocket attack on Tel Aviv, Scud missiles into Tel Aviv. And they still stood fast because they gave their word, and they were going to live up to it. This has been going on since they've existed. And the United Nations is so worried about condemning them for protecting themselves, but doing nothing against asshole states like Syria. It's mind-boggling to me. Mind-boggling. Bashar Assad is a monster tyrant ruler, murdering millions of his own people and not giving a shit about it. Bibi Netanyahu just wants to protect his people from outside attacks, being painted as an evil monster. They're not even trying to grow. It's not like they're trying to take over nations.
No, and even he has said that he's gone in and attempted to stop certain settlements from growing, and has actually gone in and pulled people back.
Yes.
Into Israel. So all Benjamin Netanyahu wants for Israel is for Israel to attempt to settle its own problems with the, air quote, Palestinians, and UN stay the hell out.
Yeah, I don't see the UN running into Mexico with all these cartel wars.
We pay $8 billion with a B billion dollars under mandatory payments to the UN.
72% of their budget yearly comes from us.
A quarter.
Oh, I thought it was higher.
No, a quarter. We fund everything.
Yeah, but we also give them the land for free.
Yes,
hey,
we
we're
do.
up against a break. When we come back, we may slam the UN a little bit more, only because it's almost...
Because it's such a target-rich
so
environment,
great.
and it's
It
so
feels
easy.
so good. It feels so good to just to slam the UN. And we have a lot more that happened this
I
week.
think they're in for some hard times.
Oh, I do want to
I
go through
really
our
do.
predictions when we come back. All that and more here on the SHR Media Network. Stick around. We'll be right back.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
Breaking news. According to the latest report coming out of SHR Media, a merchandise store to support both the Reaver of Common Sense and SHR Media has just been unleashed to the general public. Be forewarned that this site can be contagious and numerous items can be purchased to support the best news programming. Go to Reaver.one website and click on the store link to check out the merchandise.
Hello, I'm Matt, a student at Hillsdale College. Here's Hillsdale President Larry Arnn on the continuing relevance of the Constitution.
Many argue today that the Constitution is outdated because it addresses problems peculiar to the 18th century. Some parts of the Constitution do read rather quaintly. Consider the injunction against titles of nobility in Article 1, Section 9 of the Constitution. But is that so outdated? The purpose of the injunction is to prevent the government granting special privileges to some for partisan reasons. This strikes at the heart of the rule of law. The crony capitalism so common today is a place where the government bestows favors and tax dollars on some businesses to give them a leg up over others. This is exactly the kind of thing the Constitution was meant to prohibit. The Constitution is not so outdated after all.
This Constitution Minute was brought to you by Hillsdale College. To join the national conversation on the Constitution, go to constitutionminute.com.
Times are dark. The people misled by corrupt politicians, lied to by establishment media, and deceived by the false messages of Islam. A nation in confusion needs a guide. It needs a man with a cane. I'm Dave Milner. Join me on Spreaker, SHR Media, High Plains Talk Radio, Live Rebooting Liberty, and YouTube for a unique brand of commentary on the unpleasant blind guide. Because truth is not always pleasant.
In a world controlled by corrupt politicians,
You got a business. You didn't build that.
a team of ordinary men emerge from the ashes to give voice to the voiceless and hope to the hopeless. Sackhead Sean.
Dude, I'm not saying Cap was stupid, bro.
Sackhead Clint.
All good friends of ours usually show up drunk.
Also starring Sacco as the producer.
I'm a little bit drunk, I'm a little bit drunk, 'cause I'm drinking, drinking, drinking.
They are the Sackheads Radio Show. Every Wednesday at 8 p.m. Pacific on SHRmedia.com.
Beware, the Jersey Takeover is here. Every Monday through Friday, 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. You can catch the Reaver of Common Sense show, hosted by Jersey Joe, right here on SHRmedia.com and HighPlainsDailyNews.com. Only Jersey can deliver hell like no one else, so consider this your fair warning.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
And welcome back to the Sackheads Radio Show, live on the SHR Media Network. Hey, Golf in the chat room started a good, fun kind of game. Let's say we do boot the UN and we defund it and we pull out. And Israel is most likely going to, too. I think if I had to wager a guess or a bet right now, I would say that the Trump administration is already reaching out to Israel about this and discussing it with them in back channels. Oh, you should do that. He's not the president yet, blah, blah. Yeah, but he's about to inherit this pig that Obama just threw into the UN, which is kind of funny because most of the people there won't eat the pig. But Ron started a fun game of let's move the UN and start listing some wonderful places that they could exist in. Should they have to leave the United States? And I I think we should get in on this because I can think of some wonderful places for the UN to go that I would like to see them move to.
Before I play the game in a fun fashion, I'd like to tell them where they really ought to put it.
Let's stick with the fun fashion.
And that's Brussels.
Oh.
Put it back in Brussels. That wants to be left as central. Let them run that shite for a while.
No, I don't want it there. It's too easy. It's too easy. They should live in the situations that they have created.
Oh, you mean downtown Chicago?
Oh, no. That's even worse.
700 plus homicides this year. And going and counting.
I was going to say, we're not done yet.
No.
2.5 more days, brother. How about what is Aleppo? According to Gary Johnson, what about Aleppo? Let's put the UN in Aleppo. Or Mogadishu. That's always a lovely place.
I think some of our little brown brethren, yes, let's put it in Mogadishu. That would be wonderful. And let the warlords there deal with the UN. I think they'd have to have MRAPs.
Yes,
transporting the delegates to and from whatever bombed and crunchy little runway they could find to land on to get there in the first place. The UN then would have to be an abandoned building, and all they do is go to meeting.com, and then they'd all meet that way, and they'd never have to go to the damn building.
Some of the ideas from the chat room. Hell from Ken. The Arctic is always a good one. But, global warming, ew. Benghazi is a good place, but that's almost too civilized at this point.
Oh, yes.
I'm thinking Mogadishu. I'm thinking Syria. I'm thinking Chechnya, another wonderfully stable place.
Not bad.
Parts of Pakistan, Afghanistan, Iran. Let the UN exist in Iran.
How about a breeze? They could go to Cape Horn in South America.
That's a
the
good one.
breeziest point in the entire planet. Let's see if they can keep a roof on.
But I want them to go to places where they have created this.
Where it's exciting.
Haiti, wonderful place.
Very exciting.
Yes, I think Haiti would be a marvelous place for them. These are all the nations that they've done nothing. Let me just say, pick an African country for the most part.
Ken says Mars.
Mars.
I don't like that, actually.
I don't want them on Mars, because if we're going to Mars, I want us
we'd
to
screw
be
up Mars.
First. Right. No, I don't want them to screw that up.
That's a good point.
I want them to reap what they sow and exist in
Ken,
a
you've
place
been sanctioned.
that they have destroyed through the guise of trying to assist. And then have to Guam. If Guam would actually tip over, as certain state representatives said, because it was too top heavy, then perhaps. And as long as we're going down the ocean ideas, the beautiful city of Atlantis, not the casino, but the underwater former city of Atlantis, I think is a marvelous place for it.
Right.
Let's see. What are some other cities that have been buried by natural disaster? We could start with any one of those.
We could dig down into Pompeii, for example.
Pompeii would be lovely. Oh, man, but I just think that they need to live in a place where they've created the disaster and allegedly are there trying to assist but are doing nothing whatsoever.
I think King William Land in Antarctica is beautiful this time of year.
But again, there's no conflict in Antarctica. I want them to live under the RPG attacks that they're supposed to be stopping.
Well,
I want them to have to transport in MRAPs. I want them to see what reality
because
is.
They would have to. There's no doubt about it.
Outside of their ridiculous world that they live in. So any other suggestions, you can email Clint at shrmedia.com.
There you go. I like that,
Ron,
too.
thank you for the segment. That was kind of fun.
That was. That's why God created chat.
So, moving to the serious side of this, how does Trump administration respond to this and Israel? Well, we hinted about it before that Israel is probably on the outs with the UN. And I have a feeling that the Trump administration may be as well. I have a feeling that you're going to see a slow step at first and see kind of how they respond, and then you will see the jumping. And I have a feeling if we jump, a few other nations will follow that are kind of sick of the UN's bullshit of getting all this money and doing absolutely nothing. You look at the history of the UN, and it was supposed to just be a place for people to go and meet and have a conversation over conflict. The nuclear portion of it was supposed to be a nonpartisan investigatory committee just to report to the nation states what this nuclear program was doing. Their health and human services side was supposed to do nothing but provide aid to war-torn areas in times of conflict. They were never meant to be an international body, an international government, as they have become.
Right, with any power.
With any power.
Truly, when actually you think about it, though, the UN has as much power over countries as, say, an asthmatic chihuahua. The UN only has power if the country affected allows it to.
Exactly. When you start giving sovereignty to the UN, it's your own fault.
Well, when you start giving domain to the UN and acquiescing your own sovereignty that you fought for.
Yes.
Israel has fought to survive years, decades since 1948. The UN thinks that it's going to just simply fall back. They're insane.
Yes.
That just doesn't play. That doesn't work. Let's bring up, since I'd like to bring this up, and I'm sure everybody's already heard this. Most everybody, the UN, the ambassador to Israel, the United States ambassador to Israel,
Samantha Powers,
Ron Dermer.
Oh, the ambassador to Israel. Sorry, I thought you meant the UN.
Ron Dermer said this on Monday's CNN New Day. He told the host at the time, fill-in guy, Don Lemon, who I'm sure everyone loves, that the Obama administration is responsible for that United Nations Security Council resolution.
Yes.
That recommended that the Israeli settlements all go away. And then today, in Benjamin Netanyahu's speech, he said precisely the same thing. There is evidence, clear evidence, that he says that he's going to provide to the upcoming administration, did not name Trump specifically, but we know what he means, that the U.S. is behind that. And then Kerry comes out today, and Josh Earnest and other spokes critters come out and disavow all of that. Well, ladies and gentlemen, ask yourself, sit back for just a moment. Why is it that people of esteem like Benjamin Netanyahu and our ambassador, the U.S. ambassador to Israel, Ron Dermer, would say that the U.S. is responsible for the creation of these sanctions?
Yes.
Do you think perhaps these gentlemen have a bit of insight?
Just slightly?
That maybe you and I do not?
Well, and listen.
You think of the wedge this places in between Ron Dermer and the Obama administration.
And you have a guy who spends a lot of time with Netanyahu, and Netanyahu came out right away and said, we have strong proof that the Americans were behind this.
Yes. And that's the exact same thing that Ron Dermer said earlier. He said it before Netanyahu on Monday.
Even the Egyptian newspaper, according to Jersey Joe from the River of Common Sense, says they have proof that the U.S. was behind the UN resolution.
And so when people are saying, sort of sub rosa, well, there may be another resolution coming, I would say there just very well may be. It isn't a suggestion that this is the way the Obama administration wants to go out. It's clear this is the way the Obama administration wants to go out.
This is the legacy.
They'd rather crap in the punch bowl and then urinate all over it.
And then invite their friends over to do the same thing to the fish tank.
Yes.
It's amazing to me. And the other resolution is going to be along the same lines as this. And it doesn't really matter to Israel, these resolutions. They're angry about it just because they're constantly being beaten by the UN that they donate money to as well. But I think what's more upsetting to them is the fact that this administration is doing this damage on their way out the door. I've said before, you look at the United Nations as a whole, when Russia and China hold a veto, anytime it comes to an active military act or an act of war from the UN, it's very, very telling who's in control there. When you have the resolutions like this for human rights, and you have people who come from nations that persecute anybody who does non-Islamic things and kill them.
Yeah.
And they're voting.
Pick any Muslim country, fill in the blank, and there are rights violations going on there of heinous proportions.
Yes.
Every day,
Yes.
and they get totally placed on ignore mode.
Like nothing.
What the hell?
Nothing. And by the way, the other states that the UN resolutions have come against, you said there was, 3 or 8 other ones?
There were 3 that crafted it. Here's the weird ass thing. Well, these are the ones that people are outwardly acknowledging. Did you know that, according to what the American media maggots say, New Zealand was one of the creators of that sanction?
Mm-hmm.
What? Again, what the hell? Ooh. New Zealand, apparently going there and shooting your beautiful skies and wonderful mountains. I guess that's not enough. It's time to poke us in the eye.
Well,
and Israel as well.
Well, and you start looking at those other resolutions, and they're against North Korea. And I want to say one of the other ones was against Iran.
There were 3. There was a sanction against Syria. They're obvious players. North Korea and Iraq.
Iraq. Sorry, I thought Iran, but it was Iraq.
No,
with
it was
the,
Iraq.
gas and the Kurds.
Yeah, and that was it.
Yep.
That was it for the session, the 70th session between 2015 and 2016. 22-0 of the other sanctions, more than 5 times, were against Israel.
I friggin' believe. You just can't even... it just drives me insane. Absolutely drives me insane. So let's talk about what would happen if the U.S. and Israel jumped out of the UN. Well, first of all, Israel, I think, is the biggest hurt to them metaphorically, or we would hurt them budgetarily. But the fact that Israel now plays in that party, if you will, at the UN, with all these other nations, is kind of a like, hey, we're here to be nice guys, and all these other nations goes, yeah, we can use the UN to control Israel now. Perfect. Israel walks away, and you now have an Israel who, even though they don't give a damn, politically now and openly can say, we don't give a damn. You're going to start making some real nervous people in those areas, because now there's not any sort of UN resolution. Now there's not any sort of anything to stop them from pushing back against Syria, from doing whatever they have to do to defend their borders. They answer to nobody but NATO at that point. And that says a lot. That's the biggest fear of some of those nations. Iran's biggest fear is that the UN, or that Israel walks out of the UN, stays a part of NATO, because now the UN could have played a role prior, at least politically, if we're going to come to blows, especially with the nuclear facility issue going on, nuclear weapons in Iran. They had a chance of the UN maybe brokering something. Now the UN's out. So
the UN had its heyday. It had its reason. And it's past its reason. It's past its due date now.
And I agree with you. But for that, I also want to say, look at the other side that Iran has to worry about. If Israel preemptively strikes for nuclear weapons, they answer to nobody. And if Iran, for some reason or another, were to retaliate, then Israel could invoke Article 7 of the NATO treaty. And that pulls all the other nations in, for the most part, against Iran. So you now have a very nervous Iran should Israel walk away from the United Nations, because that buffer is gone for Iran. The same buffer that Israel's building with the Gaza Strip and the settlements, it's the political one is gone for Iran and other rogue nations who are supporting and defending the terrorists.
Well, yes, because all those sanctions, not just in 2015 to 2016, historically all the sanctions against Israel, most of the sanctions have gone against Israel. So basically the UN is doing the work of Iraq,
yes,
of Iran,
yes,
of Syria,
yes,
and of the rest of the bad actors in the Middle East. But the UN only has as much power as you accede to it. Mm-hmm. Other than that, it's a toothless salamander. That's as much power as it has.
And I think you're going to see that toothless salamander get some of its tail cut off with Israel walking away. And now you start looking at, should America walk away from the United Nations.
I say not just yes.
No, hell yes.
Hell yes.
I agree. But let's say the current administration comes in and they choose to. What does this do to the United Nations? Well, like you said, quarter of their funding gone. That's a huge quarter. That's a huge piece that they won't make up anywhere else.
Funding nation states that hate us
through the United Nations
for a long time.
Yep.
I certainly hope that Donald Trump examines just who gets American aid. Yep. That American aid comes from your tax money, my tax money,
that we
all the taxes of everyone in chat and people that listen to us right now, and we have no input as to where that goes. We pay people to hate us and fight us. That shite's got to stop.
Well, so once they lose that much of their budget, let's talk about what they would have to cut. Because right now the UN's in a ton of places that they don't belong in. Or
they have to cut a bunch of their peacekeepers.
The peacekeepers would be the first one to go away.
Their little blue helmets would get put in a closet.
Yep. Oh, they'd have to be sold for goods. You'd have peacekeepers going away, and everyone said, oh, you don't care about the nations that are in conflict. Folks,
they'd have to sell the white Land Rovers.
If you think that the United Nations is doing anything in those states, you're out of your mind. They do nothing.
Their peacekeepers don't like being shot at.
And they can't shoot back. All the UN military assets, if you will, and they are their own military at that point, essentially. When you're a UN peacekeeper, you answer to the UN military staff, is the long and short of what that is. They're not peacekeepers. They're an army of no country run by a bunch of bureaucrats that were never elected. And we have peacekeepers that are part of the UN. Just keep that in mind. But when they go to these nations, they don't do anything anyways while they're there. They don't stop violence. They hand out food and they walk around and protect the UN establishments. The other thing that the UN gets a lot of from America that I don't know how this fits into the budget. I don't know. I haven't chased it down, but the equipment. They get a lot of MRAPs from us. They get a lot of heavy-duty equipment from us to protect their peacekeepers and delegations. If we were to step away, those go away.
Well, the other thing that they get from us, from the United States, which doesn't have a damn thing to do with money, is veracity. We lend credibility to their existence by simply funding, by being present, having it on U.S. soil.
Yep, with three-quarters of their spine.
And paying for the bulk of all the payments that come in to support the UN. So it's the credibility factor as well. Let the U.S. step away and see what happens to that.
Yep. Yeah, no, I mean, we're three-quarters of their spine. It's so funny because if you turn around and look at where the UN could be and what could have happened recently with it, the fact that it's sitting in New York City is one of the reasons why it's never been attacked. I don't know if there's anywhere safer for them in the sense that there's plenty of militants
I say
that would attack it.
Go away. I mean, we were joshing about that earlier, where we could put them. I say they really ought to go back to Brussels, or they ought to go back to Amsterdam.
Right.
One of those two cities would be a wonderful place, and then they can do what the rest of the leftists do in the EU and here in the United States. They can spend endless hours navel-gazing. So, well, we need to do this and we need to do that, and nobody's listening.
So here is, and Jersey Joe just got a great breakdown of the UN from 2015 for budgets. 2015, 35 countries were charged a minimum regular budget assessment of 0.001%, which works out to be approximately $28,269 apiece. 20 countries will be charged a minimum peacekeeping assessment of 0.0001% at approximately $8,470 apiece. By contrast, the U.S. is assessed 22% of our annual regular budget, approximately $622 million, and over 28% of the peacekeeping budget, $2.402 million. The U.S. will be assessed more than 176 other member states combined for the regular budget, and more than 185 countries combined for the peacekeeping budget. Ken just nailed it in the chat room. Folks, we just found $3 billion for veterans health care.
Yes, and just by one statement, Donald Trump shaved $1 billion off of the Boeing contract. They wanted 4, it's down to 3.
He's such a tyrant.
He is such a tyrant.
How dare he save this nation money?
And here's the other thing. When people say that, the United States eats up more per capita energy than anyone else, yes, we certainly do. Yep. And we sure as shite should, because it's the United States and the money and the manufacturing prowess that we have that supports and defends oversees all of these other countries. It's our military, it's our soldiers that are placed in harm's way, that are still sitting in between North Korea and South Korea. We keep the world safe, which is why we should, and it's due us, for example. Otherwise, what happens if the United States goes away? Imagine a world without... Well, I'm sure lots of people would love to imagine a world without the United States. What would you get? Absolute chaos.
It would be incredible. And listen, I'm not a big fan of all the peacekeeping missions and world policing that we do as a nation. But I also understand that there is a need sometimes for this. Look at how many times it's bit us in the ass, right? You go into Mogadishu when we tried to go in there and help out, and it turned out bad for us. It was not a positive thing.
Historically speaking...
By the way, that was a Clinton decision.
Oh, yes, it was. Historically speaking, and all the military personnel know this, when you go into a military college and study tactics and strategies, never commit military forces unless you have a complete beginning, middle, and an end. You know what you're attempting to accomplish, and you know what it looks like when it's time to leave. You go in, and if you're unwilling to kill people and break shite, you shouldn't be applied in the first place, because it's our men and women that are getting killed.
Well, and how many times, when conflicts arise and they're like, oh, we need to wait for a UN resolution before we have to do X, Y, and Z. And it's like, well, it's our people getting attacked. Why are we waiting for a resolution from anybody? I just don't understand that.
Here's another brain-glazing aspect that we haven't yet covered. People were saying...
Because we have 2 minutes.
Okay. Maybe I should wait. Okay, I'll wait. Do you have anything else? Because
I don't think I have 2 minutes worth of material, but I can come up with something.
Okay. Well, all right. Then I'll go there.
We'll start it.
I'll go. Yeah, I'll begin it. People were saying at the beginning of the Obama administration that they were fearful that somehow Obama would manipulate things in such a fashion as to actually have a third term. Which is illegal. The 22nd Amendment says that, I'm sorry, after FDR, that's just not going to be happening anymore. And yet, Obama recently said, I could have beaten Donald Trump, and I could have easily had a third term. You know, what does that say about Hillary Clinton? He said Hillary Clinton was the most accredited presidential candidate in the history of the United States. So what is Obama's legacy? Obama says that basically he ought to be a third-termer.
He's the only one that could have done it.
He said she was the most qualified presidential candidate ever, and that flies against the facts. Here's what Mr. Obama has actually done. For the past 8 years, from 2008 to 2016, the Democrats lost 63 seats in the House, 10 seats in the Senate. Let that sink into your brain housing group. And then also this. Republicans, from 2008 to 2016, gained 900 plus seats in state legislatures, along with 12 governorships all across the U.S. Meaning, what that means right now is that 2/3 of the sitting governors in this nation are Republicans. Obama, you fucktard, there's your legacy for you. And you want to go out this way with the UN?
Congratulations, son.
You've made your bed. You're going to sleep in it.
We're up against a break. We come back. I want to talk a little bit more about Obama's and his whole I could have done a third term jackassery.
Jesus Christ.
Right here and more on the Sackheads Radio Show live on the SHR Media Network. Stick around.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
Breaking news. According to the latest report coming out of SHR Media, a merchandise store to support both the Reaver of Common Sense and SHR Media has just been unleashed to the general public. Be forewarned that this site can be contagious and numerous items can be purchased to support the best news programming. Go to Reaver.one website and click on the store link to check out the merchandise.
Hello, I'm Matt, a student at Hillsdale College. Here's Hillsdale President Larry Arnn on the continuing relevance of the Constitution.
Many argue today that the Constitution is outdated because it addresses problems peculiar to the 18th century. Some parts of the Constitution do read rather quaintly. Consider the injunction against titles of nobility in Article 1, Section 9 of the Constitution. But is that so outdated? The purpose of the injunction is to prevent the government granting special privileges to some for partisan reasons. This strikes at the heart of the rule of law. The crony capitalism so common today is a place where the government bestows favors and tax dollars on some businesses to give them a leg up over others. This is exactly the kind of thing the Constitution was meant to prohibit. The Constitution is not so outdated after all.
This Constitution Minute was brought to you by Hillsdale College. To join the national conversation on the Constitution, go to constitutionminute.com.
Times are dark. The people misled by corrupt politicians, lied to by establishment media, and deceived by the false messages of Islam. A nation in confusion needs a guide. It needs a man with a cane. I'm Dave Milner. Join me on Spreaker, SHR Media, High Plains Talk Radio, Live Rebooting Liberty, and YouTube for a unique brand of commentary on the unpleasant blind guide. Because truth is not always pleasant.
In a world controlled by corrupt politicians,
You got a business. You didn't build that.
a team of ordinary men emerge from the ashes to give voice to the voiceless and hope to the hopeless. Sackhead Sean.
Dude, I'm not saying Cap was stupid, bro.
Sackhead Clint.
All good friends of ours usually show up drunk.
Also starring Sacco as the producer.
I'm a little bit drunk, I'm a little bit drunk, 'cause I'm drinking, drinking, drinking.
They are the Sackheads Radio Show. Every Wednesday at 8 p.m. Pacific on SHRmedia.com.
Beware, the Jersey Takeover is here. Every Monday through Friday, 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. You can catch the Reaver of Common Sense show, hosted by Jersey Joe, right here on SHRmedia.com and HighPlainsDailyNews.com. Only Jersey can deliver hell like no one else, so consider this your fair warning.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
And welcome back to the Sackhead Radio Show live in the SHR Media
We were just
Network.
talking off break about what, and I wish you'd tell people what you think is coming.
So here's how I kind of see this wrapping up. Look at the guy who's been a lame duck president on major situations domestically. Has done
and
nothing.
who voted present as a senator.
Has done nothing. Internationally, he is now setting up this whole Israel issue with the UN and America just before he runs out the door. But we also have him coming out today and blaming Russia for hacking the election after he said that, he would have gotten elected a third time because.
Right, because he's so successful, as I delineated about 7 minutes ago. Wow, what a great legacy!
With the words retaliation and sanctions put into it against Russia, the words retaliation is big. Listen, we know Putin and Obama don't like each other, but he's driving that wedge or lighting that fire, depending on how you want to look at it, for this incoming administration. The guy who swears to God they're doing everything they can to have a peaceful transition of power is stirring the pot with a lot of international issues.
And the person who said when he's coming in, Mr. Obama, that ours is going to be the most respected,
transparent
administration,
open administration ever.
That we will negotiate with people, we will be kind to people, and now he's the first one that's saying, "Oh, we need to have retaliate. We need to retaliate."
All of a sudden,
Russia.
he's walking out the door and he's got balls of steel.
Yes,
it's amazing.
Yeah.
Red line, Syria, nothing. And again, I'm not a big fan of being the world's policeman, but can you imagine if we stepped into Syria at that point, 3.5, 4 years ago? When there was the red line? If we actually made a difference, what could have been accomplished by now?
Yeah, paper tiger.
And I'm not saying, listen, I hate being the world's policeman, but
there are times.
There are times. And in that situation, it was more so that he said it and did nothing. Cruise missile attacks would have been more than enough. Right. He showed the entire world his cards right then and there.
Yes, no balls.
So now you have all this set up. And historically, when you change power or political parties in the White House, what happens 2 years later in the election? Normally, you get a flip-flop in the power that be the political party that's in power in the House and the Senate.
Well, yeah, the House is coming up for elections in another 2 years.
Yep. You historically get that swing the other way because people want to see balance. What would happen in 2 years if all of a sudden an amendment or a change to the 22nd popped up, and now all of a sudden you have people pushing to say, hey, maybe he can't do 3 terms in a row, but after you do 2 terms and take one off, why can't you get elected back? Or something innocuous like that. And he starts stirring this pot again and start getting it going again. That, to me, is a possibility. And people can say a lot of things, but you know what? I don't put anything past this man for what he has accomplished. Like I said, 2 months ago, 2.5 months ago, he's calling Hillary the most qualified individual to ever run for the office of president. And 2 days ago, he's talking David Axelrod about how, I could have won a third term if I wanted to. I could have beat Donald Trump. People love me. That is the biggest narcissistic lunacy statement I have ever heard.
Never underestimate the arrogance, the bold, the naked arrogance of Barack Obama.
But what does that give the leftist supporters? A goal. It stirs them up a little bit. Oh, if he could have won, then what do we have to do to get him back into the White House? We're already here after this election, the Electoral College. We talked about that last week. Got to dump the Electoral College. You've already seen the changes the leftists are going to do. This one, in 2 years, may seem... they could even sell it under the whole, it gives Trump the ability to come back in a couple years, blah, blah. They could package it however they want. We have a short memory in this country about certain things. And
yes, I called it historical Alzheimer's. We definitely have that.
And it would not shock me to see that push in 2 years to change that 22nd Amendment to allow for a re-election of somebody who's maybe been out for 4 years or gets a total of, you get a total of 12 years. It doesn't matter when you do it, et cetera, et cetera. And especially if the next 2 years the Trump administration is dealing with the fallout of the Obama's horrible decisions. Internationally, we're having a lot of things that we have to patch up, and it focuses the administration a lot on international versus the domestic. Now,
there are some things that I don't think you can put back in the coffin, so to speak. I think China being in the South China Sea, in that artificial island of theirs, I don't think there's putting that genie cannot be put back in that bottle.
Gone forever.
And so that cedes control to the Chinese.
I agree. I agree wholeheartedly.
And without going nuclear, I don't know how you'd resolve that. But that's Obama's phrase of leading. That's his indicative, his behavior of leading from behind. And he certainly has. Leading from behind is not leading at all.
Yeah. That's not leading. You're not leading from behind.
One of the most stupid phrases in the world. Leading from behind. What the What the hell does that mean?
I just had a friend of mine send me a message, and that message essentially says, hey, Obama's like a bitter ex-wife as he's walking out the door. He's just destroying the house.
Oh yeah,
on the way out.
He wants to turn everything upside down. That's why he's doing what he can with the UN and with Israel. He's doing it because he can, because he hates Israel, because he hates Benjamin Netanyahu, and he knows for him he is a lame duck, and there will be no repercussions upon him. He's not going to have to handle it.
And they have 2 years to turn the Dems around after the fact and use everything that's failing from the Obama administration as fodder, even though it was created by Obama. Trump's going to have to deal with it.
Well, and the other thing is, guess what, boys and girls, ladies and gentlemen, children of all ages, there are going to be in the next 2 years over 100 Democrat seats up for bid, and those could also be filled by Republicans.
Interesting.
Put that in your pipe and smoke it.
Some food for thought from Ron in the chat room. Obama becomes the next leader of the DNC for the next few years. I think that's a very possible...
One thing we know, Sean, you and I both know, we're looking at each other eye to eye right now.
Yes.
You and I both know Obama is going nowhere.
Nowhere. There's a reason why he's living in D.C.
If you think he's going to go out calmly and just, I want to build my presidential library. No, that's not going to happen.
Right.
He's going to be involved in politics because he is Barack Hussein Obama. And he knows better than anyone what you need better than you.
Yep.
So he is going to be involved in politics.
Another word out of the chat room from the exceptional conservative one, Ken McClinton. People that lead from behind find it easier to shoot you in the back. Well,
just exactly what happened to Netanyahu in Israel.
Yeah. Well, I said...
They were stabbed in the back.
Ask the Russians in World War II at Stalingrad. Your leaders were standing behind you. Your buddy had a clip. You had the gun, and the two of you ran towards the enemy, and one of you died. If you tried to turn around, they'd
That's
shoot
right.
you.
That's exactly right.
So it's go, go, go to the death, and do as our bidding to the death.
And you were never trusted with maps.
Anything.
Only the officers had maps.
So, yeah, I don't think, and I've said this before, I would not be shocked, and I know the host nation rule, and I don't give a damn. And you know what? We can even use the pulling of the UN as an example here. Say we pull out of the UN and we're no longer the host nation. All of a sudden, you have the head of the UN become Barack Obama.
Well, he certainly knows all the ins and outs of the United States, does he not?
And I hate to say...
And you would find the leftists of the planet rallying around him. If for no other reason than they perceive, and perception can frequently become everything, they perceive him as the underdog.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
Look what the United States has done. Think of all the things that Barack Obama could have done had he not been opposed by all of those evil, evil conservatives and Republicans. Think of the progress he could have made for the United States of America.
Yes.
You know, I wish that he would go somewhere else. He needs to take his leadership abilities and use them.
How can we do that?
UN Secretary General.
Ooh.
Nice.
We have a real leader now. We could still be screwed in a bad way by Obama. Like I said, he's not going away. We have 15 minutes left in the segment.
This just popped into my Mark 1 Model 1 brain housing group. Question for you, Sir Sean.
Okay.
Will Barack Hussein Obama pardon Bo Bergdahl?
Yes.
And
without a doubt.
Can he pardon Hillary Clinton?
He can.
Will he?
No. Here's the reason why. Because in order to... He can do this kind of pre-motion pardon. But I've read language where if it's not active, in other words, she hasn't been convicted, so it's been issued, but it hasn't been put into effect.
The precedent is Richard Nixon.
What? I missed that. Oh,
Gerald Ford, President Gerald Ford.
Right, on that precedent, yes.
Pardoned Richard Nixon, who had not been convicted.
But I've seen some language, and I don't know how true this is. I've also seen some language that the same president or the next sitting president with like powers, if it hasn't been activated, if it hasn't been used, can actually remove it. So I don't know. I know he can issue it, but as far as it being undone before it's utilized, I am not 100% sure. I think he is going to pardon Bo Bergdahl, which is a tragedy to me. I think he's going to ignore the individuals who got hurt and died looking for Bo Bergdahl.
That is such a sad commentary.
He's certainly going to ignore the fact that Bo Bergdahl took off from his platoon, deserted, was seen... Put it this way. He was the best and most healthy-looking American to be turned back over as a PFW from the Taliban.
Consulting with the enemy.
Yes.
Let's be blunt.
Yes. And everyone knows that. But just like every other situation that Obama stuck his nose into domestically, if you will, he picked the wrong hero. And in this situation, he tried to make Bo Bergdahl into this American Muslim hero. Because the guy's a Muslim, I'm pretty sure. His dad was. He was raised in it, et cetera, et cetera.
Yes, his father was.
He was trying to do that whole unity. He could care less about Bo Bergdahl, but he was trying to gain political points with it. And it backfired on him again. And he wants to wipe that stain off the carpet. I think you're going to see pardons, but from Obama, that are out of control.
Well, you're already seeing that. He's pardoned many people for drug offenses.
Yes.
The adjunct offenses on those, many of those people were convicted of not just drug charges, but gun charges, firearms charges. And he's decided to kick them out as well and give them presidential pardons.
And I have no shock that it's coming at all. I think it's going to be very, very soon.
He's going to have to do it quickly because the door is, in fact, starting to close.
I get so frustrated just thinking about it.
It is frustrating, but I hate to say it, and I'm going to continue saying it because I believe it's true. This, ladies and gentlemen, is the new normal. When we think that, we all know, this past year has been terribly contentious. And the accusations have been flying back and forth. And then people are anticipating that in a month or so, they thought after the election it'll all die down. Wrong. Well, after Trump is actually installed, it'll all die down. Wrong. That the leftists will finally and the Democrats will all get together and they'll sort of move along and make sure that business is being conducted. Wrong. Leftists are not going to stop pushing. This is the way it's going to be.
This is
contentious, horribly contentious from now on. So if you think that you're going to go to bed if you're a political animal like I am, or if you actually pay attention to what's going on in the world, one or two things are going to happen. You're going to have to drink a hell of a lot more vodka.
Bourbon.
Or you're going to have to lose sleep at night. One of the two.
Well, listen.
Or you can do, if you're me, you can do both.
One of the things that, one of the biggest things that Trump has to tackle, and in 4 years, if it's not Trump, the next president, is getting rid of this political vitriol that has grown in the last 8 years in this country. If he can do the job that he said on election night to unify masses, to bring people together, and I think part of that...
Leftists won't let him.
But I think part of that is once the examples start showing, once the economy gets better, once jobs start increasing, and those few snowflakes who actually start to pick up work again and are like, hey, wait a minute, I'm getting more out of this than I thought I would. I actually have a nice home and a vacation and all these other things. You can start that pattern. Look at coming out of the 60s and the 70s, this country was in rough shape politically. There's a lot of fighting going on. It was different than it is now, but it was still in rough shape. And you had a Reagan that came in and settled a lot of the differences and brought a lot of people together who may have disagreed otherwise. Now, we have social media, we have more outlash, it's just easier to be an angry individual now in public. But I am not comparing the two per se. I'm comparing the task that Trump has in front of him to what Reagan had after Carter left. Listen, after Carter left, kind of like Obama, the Democrats were in total disarray. You look at the Reagan election and how he was supposed to get annihilated, and then all of a sudden it was going to be close, and then all of a sudden he ran away with the election. Trump's done that same thing, and the Democratic Party was the mess that we see today. There's a lot of infighting, a lot of blaming, a lot of different ideas, people pushing for power in the Democratic Party, etc. He has that chance to unify, and he has that chance to bring people together. And I hope he is able to do it. But I think he has the potential. And listen, and by the way, Sackhead Clint has fed me some topics for tonight.
That's timely.
Well, no, he did it. He did it way earlier, and I've used a couple of them. Israel was the big one. But one of the other announcements say, you brought up Trump and Boeing, but Trump also announced that Sprint
yes,
is going to bring back 5,000 jobs, and there's another company that wants to start a plant here for 3,000 jobs. Shaved $1 billion off the budget with Boeing. Yeah.
See, here's the absolute insanity and hypocrisy of leftists. They would rather it all crash so that they can say they're correct. Now, historically, they've all said, oh, my God, well, with regard to corporations are bad. Well, Trump isn't even installed as president yet. That comes January 20th, and already Ford has said it's not going to be leaving its Kentucky plant. It was considering it. They're going to stay. Carrier, Apple with regard to the iPhone. There's another corporation whose name escapes me, and now Sprint, and he's not even president.
Right.
What he does, in a way, his bully pulpit right now is it's geometrically larger than Obama's.
But it's not a bully pulpit, and that's the difference.
No, he's not even there to make it a bully pulpit yet.
Exactly.
But he's already getting results. And now that's bad. The leftists are saying, Donald Trump shouldn't be having any input whatsoever to corporations and saying how corporations need to run themselves and their budgets, etc. Well, that flies in the face of what they've been saying for decades.
Yep. And
so now if Trump says it, bad.
Right. And now you're starting to get jobs back. You look and listen, if he redoes NAFTA, you're going to get a lot more jobs back. If he follows through, and I was talking to someone the other day, if 40% of his plans in the first 4 years he follows through with, you could see a very economically different nation in this country. 4 years is a long time. And even by the end of 4 years, and listen, he's not going to do it all in the first 100 days.
No. And he's going to do a lot of shite that we don't agree with.
Right. And the media,
we know that.
The media who's pushing that first 100 days like it's the most important 100 days of his...
like they were saying, well, he's not doing anything in terms of arranging his cabinet early.
Right.
He's arranged his cabinet earlier than 75% of the other presidents. Shut up.
The exceptional conservative has one that Trump may have missed. Gun manufacturer tax breaks. If you build a gun factory in urban centers, then you get 100% of the tax break for each person hired.
Or each person shot accidentally. Oops, sorry.
But honestly, though, what a great idea. I mean, gun manufacturing is going to go through the roof here. If he makes positive changes...
Except in California.
Well, yeah, listen, if he passes that national concealed carry that he talked about a year and a half ago, if he passes that law, California is going to be out in its ear on a lot of things.
Well, and guaranteed what it'll make, all those little leftist arseholes that want to secede are going to push for it. They're going to push harder.
Please.
And I say, you bet.
Go for it.
You betcha. Do it.
Motivate me to go.
Yes.
Motivate me.
Yes.
Motivate me.
And then you can lose all your federal funding. Screw you, California.
I think they should pull it anyhow.
Oh, hell yeah.
But you look at that first 100 days comparative that they're trying to do. They're trying to set it up so in 100 days they can say, well, he hasn't done A, B, and C, and X, Y, and
Yes.
Z. Meanwhile, this president, for 7.5 years, got, well, that was left in their lap by the Bush administration, and this was the Bush's fault. For the last 8 years, that's all you've heard.
Well, yes. When you think about that, it's all Calvin Coolidge's fault.
Yes, it's all Calvin's fault, all the way back to Calvin. So you have to look at that first 4 years, and after 3, we should have a pretty good bead on where things are going. Now, the first 100 days, there's going to be a lot of things that he can do without Congress, overturning executive actions, et cetera, et cetera. But you need Congress for a lot of the bigger things.
Yes, and
you
you also
may not
need
get a vote in 100 days.
You also need many of the cabinet appointments. Here's one ray of sunshine good that I heard today. A lot of the people that know about politics, etc., inside politics, so to speak, they are all saying that Sessions will pass easily.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if Sessions becomes Attorney General, let's talk about these 2 words. 4 words. Attorney General, Hillary Clinton. That's all I have to say.
You just made me nauseous. Like I might vomit a little bit in my mouth.
What's that dribbling on the side of your mouth there?
You just made my stomach pit.
I know.
That hurts.
I know.
That hurts.
Jeff Sessions has the ability to right so many wrongs.
Yes, he could work on a lot of things and work on them fast. And if he doesn't, I think he can and he will.
Well, the other thing is, we all know, we're adults, Sean. We all know that Trump isn't going to be able to do all of these things. Okay, then you collectively hold his hand to the fire. Same with Jeff Sessions or any of the other cabinet nominees.
Well, and I've said this from the beginning. We need to hold him as accountable as we have
don't let
anybody
up.
else.
Yes, exactly.
But I believe on some level anyhow that you will not need to, based on some of the things that he's going to do, and then other things, we'll have to clean it up. Good idea out of Ken McClellan.
I love that. That's what I was laughing about.
Carbon tax on politicians. Politicians that deliver the most talks is taxed with the Truman tax of 95%. I'm all for it.
Hell yes. Ken, my brother from another mother, you are absolutely correct.
I say it all the time. He's a brilliant man. Speaking of Ken and the Exceptional Conservative, make sure you check out his show here every single night, Monday through Friday. Well, every weeknight, I should say, Monday through Friday at 9 p.m. Eastern Time till 11 p.m. In the mornings, make sure you're checking out Jersey Joe, the Reaver of Common Sense.
Jersey Joe reaves some damn good common sense.
Absolutely. Early in the a.m., Pastor Shannon and Mike. In the afternoon, you're getting Lonnie and Ralph, which is just amazing. Of course, John Matthews, the Conservative Syndicate's in there. Pundit Press, High Plains Pundit. Excuse me, it's been a long day. Danny Butcher.
It's not like you hadn't had things to do.
With news and commentary. And so many other great shows here on the SHR Media Network. Make sure you check us out. Like I said, this year we're going to start expanding. We're going to start doing some work. We're going to start really making a difference.
I think this is a wonderful time for SHR Media. I'm so happy to be here. I think timing is everything. This is going to go places. And Freedom Fest next year is going to be an ass-kicking event.
Enormous. Make sure you get yourself there. Folks, that's it for the Sackheads Radio Show. Wish you a happy new year.
That's it for 2016 for us.
We will be talking to you in 2017 the next time our beautiful, soft, gentle voices meet your beautiful ears.
And perhaps even that person over there.
Yeah, hopefully the nose is back for the ears next year.
It would be great.
That would be great if he's back for next year.
I'd like to see him.
Make sure you have a great rest of your week. Enjoy your New Year's and be safe. We want you here with us next week.
Take care and God bless, ladies and gentlemen.
Late night conservative talk show in America, Sackheads Radio. And listen, there are no people better on the air to give you the best in conservative talk than Sackhead Sean and Sackhead Clint. And we're working on the immigration papers for a certain other guy who happens to work here too. For those who are tuning in around the world to the best in late night conservative talk, Tackheads Radio.
Tack news. Tack news.
Radio.
Tack news. Tack news.
Radio.
The best late night conservative talk show in America. In America.
In America.
Into the silo.
And in this web was a large, I'm pretty sure it was the biggest spider I've ever seen.